Are you sick of losing your fantasy leagues to that one guy? That guy who seems like he's always in the know? Tune into this video so you can get an edge against that guy. What's going on, everybody? It's Meek and Woo here from FTR. We're here to give you a video today. We're going to talk about bounce back candidates this year in the year 2025. We have two players from each position, and I'm going to kick it off first. First one you're going to want to have, or for a bounce back, is CJ Stroud, quarterback out of Houston. Last year was the year from hell for that offense. Bobby Slowick is gone now. Nick Caley's in. He's the former passing game coordinator for the Rams. So, think Sean McVay and how that offense is going to move. There was some pathetic offensive line play, but hopefully we're going to get a healthy season from Nico Collins. They did take two wide receivers in the draft in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. But in terms of Stroud, he was 8th in dropbacks, 11 in attempts. This team wants to throw the ball any chance that they get, and I think the moves in the draft and also in their offensive coordinator, screams that.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see, what Nick Caley can bring to this offense. Like we've said multiple times before, anytime you can have a fantasy piece that's tied to guys like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, but definitely McVay in this case, they're bringing over a coordinator who worked with him. So I think some of those details should be brought into this Houston offense.
Absolutely. Who do you have for a bounce back candidate?
Yeah, my first one's going to be Brock Purdy. Payday, my man. I think he deserves that money for sure. Going into this year, I think they're looking to get Christian McCaffrey looking back to be his normal self, which can open up so many opportunities for that offense. And Purdy's best season came on the back of, CMC when he had 2,000 all-purpose yards back in 2023. So we've seen that positive correlation in years past. Last year, they missed out on Ayuk. Hopefully he can be ready sooner rather than later, but that's still up in the air, so we will have to wait and see on that. But they do have Clay Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. He's worked with Purdy ever since he's been in the league, and obviously we've seen some really positive things from Brock Purdy, so that relationship seems to be working out really well. And again, like I just said, guys like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, you want to have pieces of their offense, and I have full confidence in Kyle Shanahan going forward. So now that Brock Purdy's earned his money, they know that this is their guy moving forward. I'm all in on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think San Francisco as a whole, was an injury-riddled season, and I think their team as a whole is a bounce-back candidate. I think they're going to do really well this year. Moving into the running back position, I'm going to give you Kenneth Walker as a bounce-back candidate. We talked about Clay Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. I'm going to tell you about Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator in New Orleans, led with Alvin Kamara, who had 1,400 all-purpose yards last season, even missing 4 games. I know people who have had Kenneth Walker, you're worried about injuries and things like that. However, Seattle invested heavily in their offensive line. 3 of their draft picks this year were offensive linemen, including their first-round pick, who was an offensive guard. With Kenneth Walker, his receiving yards, targets have increased every season. So when you think Kubiak, I want you to think Alvin Kamara and that correlation there. He had 6 games with 5+ targets last season, and that correlation could fall with Kenneth Walker Jr. or the third. Sorry, with 6 missed games last year, though, he's still ranked 8th in forced missed tackles.
He's a bruiser.
He's a bruiser. He's a beast, and throughout the offseason, Seattle has only talked about volume, getting him touches and things like that, and those are things you love to see in fantasy football.
Yeah, we all know the talent that Kenneth Walker, we've seen it, him portray that on the field, but the outside things of bringing in Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator and really focusing the scheme around Kenneth Walker is some real green flags for me.
Absolutely. Moving into our next running back, your guy.
Yeah, my guy, Breece Hall. I had to do it. This is a prove-it year for Breece. In that draft class that he was a part of with Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, and Sauce Gardner, he's the only one out of that group that hasn't gotten his 5th-year option picked up yet. So he has to go and prove it that he's worth this money. This is the best offensive line he's ever going to be running again behind. Olu Fashanu was a first-round pick last year. John Simpson, Joe Tipman, Elijah Vera-Tucker, and of course this year Armand Membu, who was another first-round pick this year. So this will be the most consistent offensive line he's ever been able to run behind. And out of the whole offensive line, the oldest one is only 29. So this group could stick around for a good amount of time. He has a new head coach in Aaron Glenn, who has repeatedly said he wants to run the ball. He's made that very public. Sure, the unscripted receptions may come down for Breece, with Justin Fields' ability to run the ball, but he's way too dynamic of a playmaker to not get those kinds of touches at all. So there will be scripted plays for him to receive the ball like that. This is absolutely a 1,000 rushing yard season loading for him. He hasn't had one yet, and I refuse to believe that he's going to be 3 to 4 years in the NFL without having a 1,000-yard rushing season. And Hall, he notably plays better on gap runs compared to zone. He's finished with 5.6 yards per carry on gap runs and 3.7 last year on zone runs. And the Jets' new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, he comes from Detroit, who had the 6th highest rate of using zone runs last season.
Yeah, I think, Hall this year with the combination of the offensive line, the new scheme, I think is gonna do wonders for him. Moving into our wide receiver now. First one I'm going to give you is Puka Ngata. We talked about him if you tuned into our Cornerstone episode on the FTR channel. I talked about Puka Ngata. I'm bringing him up again as a bounce back candidate. Average last year, 0.2 routes per receptions per route and 0.3 targets per route over the last 2 seasons, which both rank best among all wide receivers. He had a 37.1% target rate last season, which was the highest among all wide receivers. At least 75 routes run in the last 19 years. Volume may come down. They brought in Devontae Adams, who, he is 32 years old, but he does command a lot of targets. However, but the quality of targets that you're going to see from Puka Ngata are definitely going to rise. We all saw what he was capable of in his rookie season. He had 105 receptions on 153 targets, just under 1,500 yards, which was a rookie record. And any offensive weapon that's tied to Sean McVay is someone that you can trust and you want to invest in fantasy football.
Yeah, Puka's a ball-dominant guy. It's all about having opportunities in fantasy football. That's how you score points. And Puka Ngata is going to have an absurd amount of opportunities this year.
Absolutely. You have a wide receiver for us, Woo, for
absolutely. Absolutely. I got George Pickens, the newest Dallas Cowboy, a major upgrade in situation. George Pickens comes from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who currently is running out Will Howard as their quarterback, a 5th-round draft pick.
Right.
And now he ends up in Dallas running mate with CeeDee Lamb and also Dak Prescott, who's had some very good fantasy finishes in years past. Obviously, lots of eyes will be on CeeDee. Pickens, this is a great opportunity for him to strive as a wide receiver too. We've seen Prescott be able to feed 2 guys in terms of a full fantasy season. We saw it with Gallup a few years back, and pickups is a major upgrade from the level of wide receiver 2s that they've had in years past. He's a deep ball threat. He was 12th in yards per reception last year with 15.3. He can take the top off of defense, while Lamb kind of roams in his between the numbers role. So I think this marriage will work really well between the two.
Absolutely, and I think Dak is someone who throws the ball deep more than any quarterback in the league, and when you pair that with someone like George Pickens, that only means good things for him. We're going to round it out with our last position, our tight end position. First one I'm going to give you is Dalton Connette, tight end out of Buffalo. We're still waiting on a breakout year from the highly touted tight end. He was out of Utah. But here are a couple of stats and tidbits for tight end breakouts. 68% of tight end breakouts are between the ages of 23 and 25. Kincaid's 23.6 years old. And superstar tight ends who broke out in age 25 seasons, these names are George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz.
Good list.
It's a pretty good list. So, all is not lost in Dalton Connette. And then tight ends in their year 2 and 3 season, we see 61% of them that are able to break out. We did see a decrease in targets in Connette, but he has the ability to create a lane for himself in Buffalo. Buffalo doesn't have a clear-cut number 1 target. There's, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, who disappointed in his rookie year. So there's definitely an avenue for Connette to carve it out. He was 3rd in yards after the catch per reception, which is 6.5, and he was 7th in ADOT with 8.2. So he can be physical and deal with contact and also get into the second level of a defense, which you love to see. And lastly, his overall offensive grade from PFF jumped. Last year he was 67.2, and now 2 years ago he was 67.2. Last year he was 76.6. So those are all important things to note.
Yeah, I remember all the hype for Connette when he was coming out of Utah, and we've all been kind of sitting here waiting for him, to really fulfill those expectations. And I think this would be a great opportunity or a great year for him to do so.
Yeah, last bounce back candidate. We got another Dallas Cowboy.
I most certainly do. I got Jake Ferguson. Dak being hurt ruined his entire season. They're throwing out Cooper Rush. And it's not going to work. He didn't have a QB who could support multiple fantasy options, so it became the CeeDee Lamb show, which is rightfully so.
Right.
But Jake Ferguson is another guy who can deal with contact. He was 13th in yards after the catch per reception with 5.6. In 2023, with a fully healthy Dak season, he had 71 catches on 96 targets, which is the number that we would prefer to see. This came from his best fantasy finish. So Dak being healthy is important for all of these Dallas weapons. I'm fully anticipating Dak to come back this year with a chip on his shoulder. There's a lot of noise around Dallas all the time, being America's team and having the most media attention on them. So I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder, and the fantasy production from his offense will follow.
Yeah, and it seems like Dak loves Jake Ferguson, always, or in tight ends in general. You look back to his rookie season with Jason Witten, Dalton Schultz, and Jake Ferguson. He always finds a way to target tight ends, when he's on the field.
Yeah, and their lack of running back talent on their depth chart just screams that Dak's going to have to throw the ball a ton this year.
Huge. It's going to be huge. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are our 2025 bounce back candidates. If you like this video, make sure you give us a like and subscribe. Subscribe to the FTR channel. Check out some other videos that we have. If you like the content that Woo and I are giving you, come check us out on Fourth and Fantasy, the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. You can check us out on our socials at Fourth and Fantasy or on YouTube at Fourth and Fantasy. But with that being said, we appreciate you watching this video. We'll see you on the other side.